we start or wait a little bit?
Yeah, inshallah, let's start.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khatam al-nabiyyin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is our last class of this session, alhamdulillah. So by inshallah, give us your feedback. Inshallah, we'll talk about that, and inshallah, may Allah subhanahu allow us to come back again, inshallah, the next series of classes, inshallah. So today our agenda or our schedule is pretty packed. So we're going to move a little bit fast, inshallah. So today we're going to talk about atheism, and this is actually our own first class we're going to take, inshallah. So Allah make it easy for us as well as for you as well. But I think it would be good because the atheism is 1/3 of America is either atheist or they are not aligning themselves with any faith, and unreligious, non-religious, or any denomination that they belong to. So 29%, we'll talk about that. So that's why we decided to move towards learning about atheism as well, and how can we dismantle their arguments, inshallah. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to, inshallah, it's our humble effort, and we're going to try to understand, and then how we're going to respond to atheism. Okay, and again, as you know that if you have any questions, stop us, ask any questions, so we can answer and clarify it for you, inshallah. So just a recap from last week's or last time's class, that we talked about the contemporary questions, how we're going to handle them, how we're going to answer them. We talked about the inferiority complex of Christians, that they always are out there try to prove that Jesus ﷺ is better than Muhammad ﷺ, or Christianity is better than Islam, or Bible is superior to Quran, and we discussed various arguments that they presented, in the eyes of Allah, and the Quran teaches us that we don't make any distinction among all the prophets. They have their ranks, but we respect them all, and we never ever say any bad things about our prophets. That we all respect them. They are our role models. So, and then there was a question on the why Christians think that Jesus is God, because he did all these miracles, or he cast out demons, or he tried to establish the God's land here. The kingdom of heaven on earth. So those type of things they believe. That's why they believe Jesus is God. And then we also looked into that. We looked at the why we don't think that the Bible is God's word, because of all the contradictions they had. And then we went through the combat kit and how to use that combat kit to answer the questions of Christian missionary. We're not trying to put them down, or we're not trying to be demean with them or proving our point. The purpose is that, first of all, we answer their questions or claims they have about Christianity and Bible, plus also we want to tell them our point of view or our perspective. So this is from last week. This week we're going to talk about atheism. What is new atheism? It's a new topic for us and for you as well. So therefore, just feel free to ask questions, inshallah. What are their beliefs? Why atheism is a shirk and kufr? We're going to talk about that as well. And what Quran and Hadith talk about atheism. How do you answer atheism? How do you dismantle atheism's arguments? And then we're going to recap from our last, if we have time, then we're going to try to recap our 3 weeks classes that we have done, alhamdulillah. But we also want to do some mock session with you today. So we're going to pretend to be Christian and then ask you different questions, and or non-believers, and ask you what you think. How do you answer those questions? So we're going to have one-to-one discussion on that as well, inshallah. And if you would have any questions, we're happy to answer that. So here is I think that the synopsis of our presentation today. Why do we think that atheism is baseless? Why it is just foolish to be an atheist? I mean, we don't tell them that this is an act of foolishness. But why is that? This is the premise of our discussion today. That we're going to show you how it is. We have these scientists. I truly I think about it that we have scientists, we have these astronauts, and we have these teachers, professors, clinicians, and academia people, and all of those. How come they cannot recognize their creator? How simple-minded they are or naive they are, they cannot recognize their creator and deny creator or even go against creator. How is that possible? And that's a question for us. What puts them in that situation? So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So before we go further, as usual, I'm going to show you a small 5 minutes video commentary, and it talks about neo-atheism. So atheism was, it was a term, with God being godless and not believing in God at all. Neo-atheism is against the religion, primarily against Islam. It is started after like year 2000 or so, earlier 2000s, and 9/11 basically boosted it up. So this is with the background. Let's take a look at it. This is some music. I just want to get this on through, and then I'll unmute it.
Hello everyone, I'm CJ Wellman. Don't forget to click the subscribe button below, and we kindly ask you please help keep our show going and growing by supporting my journalism at patreon.com/CJ Wellman. You'll be helping me expose more injustices in the Muslim world. Now let's get into it. In the years after the September 11 attacks, New Atheism, a strident anti-religious ideology, emerged from the sewer to challenge Islam and give the United States-led war on terror its desperately needed veneer of intellectual cover. Remember these guys? They dominated headlines, best bookseller lists, and online debates about religion everywhere. They became insanely rich by blaming 9/11 on Islam and rallying liberals behind the Bush administration's criminal invasion of Iraq. They did this by tying Islam to violence and savagery while equating the religion of 2 billion Muslims to a virus that threatens human civilization. They want to vanquish Islam to the dustbin of history.
Islam is one of the great evils in the world, and I fear that we have a very difficult struggle there.
Why is the mother load of bad ideas? So we have, you can tell it when you see the extreme Muslims talk. They cannot wait. They cannot wait for death and destruction to overtake and overwhelm the world. They can't wait for what I would call, without ambiguity, a final solution.
Their faces were everywhere, and television talk show hosts couldn't get enough of them. Their lies and ignorance about Islam played a central role in convincing Western audiences that the war on terror was fundamentally necessary to control and suppress Muslim populations.
You would call it a war on Islam. You want to put a flame under the rhetoric and make it even.
It's not a question of flame. The United States was attacked on the 11th of September in the name of Islam.
You see, they transformed atheism into a reactionary social and political movement by turning religious non-belief into an anti-religious crusade. Now, whereas atheism on its own speaks only to non-belief in God and is not anti-anything or anti-anybody, the new atheists evangelized anti-religion by falsely asserting that anyone who believes in God is by default backwards and potentially violent. In their twisted and demented minds, the religious, particularly Muslims, are to be re-educated, shunned, or eradicated. As I revealed in a recent episode, I too was a new atheist for a 4-year period after witnessing an Al-Qaeda suicide attack in 2005. I blamed Islam for the violence I had witnessed, as stridently as Hirsi Ali, Dawkins and co. blamed Islam for 9/11. Needless to say, I've seen their vicious anti-Muslim animus and rhetoric at close quarters, having met many of them while speaking at their conferences and on their podcasts. But a few years after learning the Quran from an Islamic scholar in Indonesia, I wrote a book warning the public about the dangers new atheists pose to Muslims, secular democracy, and human rights.
Wellman uses his personal journey to issue a warning that although they hide behind slogans of rationalism and humanism,
You atheists are bigoted and provide intellectual justifications for violence against those who do not buy into their worldview. As opposed to seeing all human on human violence to be primarily driven by religious beliefs, Orleman outlines why such a view is simpleton at best.
What makes new atheists especially dangerous is they have the same binary view of the world as ISIS or the Christian right. Because like them, they divide the world into two, good versus evil. In their minds, those who champion science and decry religion are the enlightened and righteous. But those who maintain a strong religious identity are to be shunned as backwards barbarians. Because if you, like they, actually believe Islam is a cancer or virus, then the logical next step is to eradicate the disease, which is exactly how Craig Hicks, a new atheist, interpreted that message when he murdered 3 Muslim students execution style at the University of North Carolina in 2015.
In court, they told him that all 3 victims.
I'll stop here, and inshallah, you're going to have all these links. We're going to give it to you. Jazakallah khair for Brother Adil to copy all these in the flash drives you're going to get today, inshallah. So you'll have it. So again, just to give you an idea, why it concerns us as Muslims and atheists, and why it is our problem. So we have to talk about it and then defend ourselves. So let's get into this. So atheism derived from ancient word atheos. Atheos means godless. And then they believe, so atheism, they don't believe in higher deity. They don't believe in God or gods or anyone higher status or supreme status. New atheism is against religion, again, primarily against Islam. And as the brother Verleman mentioned there, okay? And then the atheism comes from, it's actually come from Ilhad. Al-had from Lahad, so in the grave, you have a main pit, and then there's an out-pocketing where the body is put. So basically it means it is deviation from the norm. So, but again, in the context of religion, it would be the denial of a deen, the denial of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or any God, as a matter of fact. So that's the atheism. New atheism started after early 2000. And then why it is a Muslim problem? So the first thing is a person who is atheist is committing shirk. He is doing kufr, an act of kufr, rejection of deen is kufr. And he's a polytheist. Why is that? It's because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells, subhanallah, alhamdulillah from the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells, and we're going to come into that inshallah later on as well, asking Rasulullah, have you seen that person who made his desire his God? And that's what it is. The nafs becomes the God. The material becomes the God. The desires become the God, or whatever it is. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, our human mind needs a supreme power. So we can follow and we can stay aligned with our doctrine. If we don't have that, then there are going to be multiple gods created. So, and then in academia, up to 37%, almost more than 1/3 of the people are atheists, or they claim themselves to be non-religious. They don't belong to any religion. There's a rapid growth in atheism. Almost 1/3 of the people in US now are atheists, or again non-religious. In year 2000, it was like 6%, 2% atheists, 6% was agnostics, and then after that there was some still, 10% or so, or around that number were non-religious, but this number has grown significantly. Some terminology, Surah Dahr talks about time, and we have this terminology Dahriya. Dahriya also comes closer to the atheists, because for them time is everything, meaning that the material, the current is everything. They don't believe anything in the past or in the future. Like they don't believe in the afterlife and so forth. So atheism, agnosticism, and then there's another terminology called mesotheism, that these people blame Allah or God, let's say God, blame God for every bad thing happening in this world. Rather than taking responsibility, They put everything on the God, the Creator. So there are four horsemen of atheism, and as C.J. Werleman also was showing, their pictures, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett, these are the ones who wrote these books on atheism, and they became insanely rich. Their books were bestsellers, and they made a ton of money on those. And that's the whole thing. Again, atheism, capitalism, materialism, it goes in that direction. So what do they claim? They claim the faith is blind, and atheism is not a religion. Science has disproven God. There's no evidence for God. Religious poisons everything. Evil and human suffering disprove God. All the suffering that people suffer, this is what disprove God. Morality doesn't come from God. Belief in miracles is superstition. So when you read that list, what do you think? You start to think, have they not been introduced towards Islam? Have they not read Quran? Look at that perspective. If you put in Christianity, yes, I can agree to this. But what about Islam? Did you read the Quran? Did you try to understand the Quran? You get the answers, all these allegations that they're trying to make. And look at the absurd questions. Can God create another God? This is coming from different sources. Can God cease to exist? If God created everything, then who created God? And then, can God make a rock that is so big that he cannot lift himself? These are the wrong questions. These are silly questions, and you can go on the list. So the idea is, again, these guys are not thinking in the right direction. They're just going in circles. There are different types of atheists, at least 6 types. And then why atheism is a problem is that it leads to immorality. How do you define what is good and what is bad? What is your moral compass? What is the relationship between husband and wife, with father and son, with son and daughter, and so forth? Friends, neighbors, where does the morals comes from? How are you going to have a social cohesion? Like, Muslims try to stick together, or, they have, if somebody runs into a problem, other person come and help them out. So with social cohesion, you're going to lose that, loss of hope. Somebody got in an accident, bad problems happen, and then loss of hope. If your deen will support you for that. And same thing is what is the purpose of life? What are we doing here? Who gives you that meaning of purpose of your life? Meaning of life, and so forth. So, and also objectification of women, that's really a big problem with this. It's using anything to gain money, to earn money, to not steal money, or so forth. So I know, how much time do I have?
No, you got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. So, so moving along, so the beliefs of atheism, they don't believe in afterlife. They don't believe in Satan, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in the hellfire or paradise, they don't believe in any of that. They don't believe in anything supernatural. They don't believe in angels or jinn or anything beyond the 5 senses that we have. Anything beyond that, they don't believe in that. They don't believe in anything which science can prove. If science cannot prove something, they weren't going to believe that, or logic or reason. That's all what they have. So imagine if you just have 5 senses, how limited you're going to be. You won't be able to see a lot of things. And even in the history, I will say that the atheism has been present for forever, even before, in BC's 200, 300, before the Isa alayhi salam. But there has been, from time to time, these atheist movements come along, as recently we have New Atheism. So Imam Abu Hanifa would have arguments with these atheists, very interesting ones. If we'll have time, we'll talk about it. But the thing that the point was that that if they don't see, they don't believe. So one of these atheists, actually, I'll briefly tell you, came to Imam Abu Hanifa and said, why can't you show me God? So he picked up a rock and threw at him, and he got a bruise and said, I'm hurting. I said, okay, show me your pain. So that answered his question. So, I think so. They don't believe in supernatural beliefs. So they don't have any afterlife concept. So when the person dies, that's the end of it for them. Cessation of existence, focus on the present only. So as I mentioned about these four horsemen of atheism, Sam Harris, these are their books. One of them is Breaking the Spell, The God Delusion, God is Not Great. So these are different books that they published under atheism. So then I want to move on to some of the roots of atheism, what they think about, why, the way they think. They think, try and go into the mind of an atheist, that they don't believe anything if there's any lack of evidence. If the evil is a big problem, they don't understand why there's an evil in the world, and they blame that on God. Argument from inconsistent revelations, rejection of concept that cannot be falsified. And so these kind of roots of the atheism comes along. As I mentioned, the history of atheism goes even before Jesus Christ, and then it has come along long ways, and from time to time their movements have been come. By the way, atheism is not a faith, it's not a religion, it's a movement. This movement has come down from time to time. What makes them atheists? A lot of times they have their personal disasters happen in their life, or they see too much suffering in the world, or they say, I believe in evolution. Yeah, we believe in evolution too, but there is a disconnect from animals to the humans. So we don't believe that the humans were evolved from animals. That disconnect is actually the act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He created Adam alayhi salam. That's the only one piece that they cannot get to. And then I can't see God. Why can't we experience God through our five senses? So obviously, it's the same thing. Read Quran, learn about Islam. Why didn't God provide? Why didn't God provide proof? I believe in Big Bang. Actually, Big Bang theory has been mentioned in the Quran as well, Surah Al-Anbiya. I think verse 53, but it will come later on. So Big Bang actually theory has been mentioned in the Quran as well. So, and then God wants me to be an atheist, personal disaster, why God created people to punish them. And that's not true. People may suffer for a period of time. It's not everlasting. It's a limited time, but the reward is everlasting. The God is all-knowing. Then why do we have this world and suffering? They say, one of the claims were that if God is all-knowing, then why we have to suffer through this test? Just, basic knowledge, send us to hellfire or to paradise. That's not fair. Everybody should be allowed to have their free will and use that. Religion starts wars. Religion are used to control people, is a business, is anti-knowledge. The last two ones especially is true for Christianity, because Christianity did the book-burning Christians and then using their faith as a tool to earn money. Population is almost 1 billion people in the world are atheists. Imagine that there's a big portion of this. And as I said, in the US, this number has gone exponentially also. Also want to share some terminology with you. It's not time to explain, but you're going to come across in atheism, when you talk about atheism, different types of arguments you're going to come across. So this is the existential argument of God. And that is, that the God being is omnipotent, is everywhere, is all source of higher, all goodness come from God. So this is, we all connect goodness with God. The logical arguments, cosmological, existential argument is also that, all the solace and comfort we get from God, if we are in pain, if we're hurting, we ask Allah to have God to help us, and that's existential evidence. And then this Surah Tur, chapter 52, verse 35, the Quran asks a reader as a set of rhetorical questions, what they were created by nothing, or what they were own creators. So this is a very strong argument for Muslims to ask them, were they created by nothing, or they were their own creator? And in the following verse, or did they create the heavens and the earth? And rather they are not certain. Who created these things? So that's basically cosmological argument. Who created the universe? Teleological argument is also similar, is who's the designer of this universe? And then ontological argument that the God being that you need to have a God that must exist to keep everything in place, in the balance, the good and the bad. So God is not just created the world and set aside. He's actively managing this world. Descendant of God is the God being the most merciful, the most loving, and all the good qualities. Again, this is our different type of arguments that we can give it to them. And Shah Waliullah Dehelvi, he has a book called Hujjatullahi Baligha, and he have a moral argument that we have goodness in our heart, and we have our good morals. Because we have good morals, therefore there has to be a higher creator who have put this in our heart, the fitrah. Okay.
2 more minutes. Maybe?
2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Big Bang, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30. I'll just give you the references. And then from the Holy Quran also, we mentioned about Surah 2, verse 35. Did you come from something or nothing? Quran and science. To date, science has never been able to prove anything mentioned in the Quran wrong. And there have been numerous things proven wrong in the Bible. Just a contrast. Inshallah, you're going to have all of these. And if I have time, inshallah, I'll show you one more short video. Otherwise, I'm going to give you all these links, inshallah, that you can enjoy, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, any questions?
By the way, this is not Brother Adil.
I hope I look like that when I get old.
I just was inspired by looking at the gentleman who is a teacher.
Any questions so far? Are you?
So the witchcraft and naturalist and all that are paganism.
That's a part of paganism, because they don't really believe in
God. So they are like, they're not atheists.
They're not atheists. They believe in something which is
like the black magic.
Right. They believe in demons and spirits and Satanism.
Yeah. But they are kind of
polytheists. They are polytheists.
They are not believing in God.
They don't believe in God. They believe in anti-God forces. They believe there are forces in the nature that you believe in. So that they're
can be part of that.
No, atheist is completely different. Atheist is in the sense that they don't believe in any higher superpower entity. Zero. They believe that the world happens to be there and everything is going by this natural phenomena that occurs in this universe. So that's atheism for you. They don't believe in any organized religion or any God whatsoever. Then you have a difference between like atheists and agnostics, right? Yeah. Agnostics are the people who believe that, they're not sure. They're not sure. They say that there's not enough evidence in the universe and in the world around us to believe in God. I mean, they don't deny the existence. They said we don't know enough about God to believe in God. So that's what it is. That's a good question. Yeah, they don't believe in any religion. They don't believe in any God. They're atheist. Communists are atheists. So yeah. Okay. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'll just briefly go over. Brother, Dr. Iftikhar has went into some of the concepts of atheism, what it is. Okay. So atheism is not. It's nothing not mysterious. I mean, we know we have them all over, and atheism is growing, especially in Europe and France and other parts of the new Western world. Atheism is growing. People are getting away from God, and they're moving more towards hedonism, which is like, worshiping your own desires. So that's what atheism will lead to. But inshallah, I'll go briefly over how to talk to atheism and how to present an argument to an atheist. Go ahead.
Is that failure of Christianity or
What is atheism?
growth?
I think it's...
Our responsibility or Christianity?
It is had we conveyed our message properly as a Muslim? No, that's a reason. Yeah, that's a reason. That's the reason atheism goes. And we have done ourselves a great disservice by acting in a way that un-Islamic, and that's what we presented to the world. So
just one comment.
Yeah.
So remember I showed you like 7 or 8 arguments that the atheists have. And I said, okay, Christianity cannot answer those. Have they not read Quran, or have they not read the Sirah, or looked at the Islam? Because Islam answers all of those things. So I think that your comment is right, that we haven't done our job
Yeah.
right, as in present them about
Go ahead.
Islam.
Oh, that's a completely different. They believe in God, but they don't believe like Scientology is more towards. They believe in God, but they believe that's more of a philosophy. L. Ron Hubbard came with that, and they believe that everything should be cured naturally. They don't believe like Christianity. They believe that God exists, but they don't really believe in like organized religion. That's what it is. And they're more towards, that's a cult actually, It's a cult. People that join the cult, they never leave that cult. Tom Cruise, a famous member of that. Right. So yeah, that's like it's like a club, basically. Once you get in the club, they say it'll open up a lot of doors for you, and then there are a lot of famous media personalities that are part of the Scientology. So obviously when you have the networking, you promote your own people. So that's what L. Ron Hubbard basically promoted, the naturalism. So it's a cult. It's not really a religion. But yeah, good question though. So Dr. Saab basically would describe what atheism is. Obviously, it's lack of belief in God or any deities. That's atheism. So why do people believe in atheism? There are different reasons. Their upbringing. If you're growing up in a household, right, where dad is atheist and mom is an atheist, obviously you'll grow up to be an atheist. Or dad is non-religious, mom is maybe religious, or doesn't know much about. Probably lead to atheism. Or you're influenced by people in your college or your schools. Obviously you'll develop these ideas as atheists. Life experiences, obviously. You go through a trauma in your life, right? My mother passed away. I prayed for her, to be saved. I prayed to God that God would save her, but God did not save her. She died. Conclusion is there is no God. So these are emotional reasons that people go through a trauma and develop these ideas. That's atheism also, that's part of that. Also personal reflection on your faith. I read my Quran and I felt that, there's not enough answers in the book, so I became an atheist. And that's a growing movement, in Pakistan, in India, I'm sure. There are a lot of young guys going through those philosophies. Or unanswered questions by faith leaders, And I went to my imam and asked him these questions, and he was never able to answer these questions. So I'm happy and unsatisfied with what he said. So I became an atheist. So these are some of the examples, people would use to become an atheist. So that's why you become an atheism. That's a reason. Okay. So again, Dr. Saab mentioned 500 to 1.1 billion people out there that identify as atheist. And you have agnosticism, obviously. I've explained that, these are the people who are not sure if God exists. Right? Then you have a deists, right? The deists, they do believe in God, but they believe that God has created this world, but he left this world like in an autopilot, right? He does not do any divine intervention. Those are deists. And the famous deists are our founding fathers. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. Abe Lincoln was a deist. Okay? These were not Christians. So unlike what they tell you that America was founded on Christian principles, and these founding fathers were Christians? No, not. They were deists. Okay, they believed in God, but they did not believe in organized religion. Because he liked to read. You know, the Keith Ellison, right? Remember, Senator from Minnesota, he took an oath upon that Quran from Jefferson. So, you know, Jefferson was a learned man. He learned a lot of things. He knew Latin, he knew Greek, he studied all these. And he realized that Christianity is a sham. So, I mean, he discovered that. But, you know, that's another topic from the day. Then you have pantheists, right? Hinduism, there's a branch in Hinduism called Advaita Vedanta. They believe that God is in everything. That's pantheist. You know, everything belongs to God, and God is in everything. You know, God is in the sun, the flower, the moon, everything that exists reflects God, and God is in them. So that's another thing. Polytheism. Yeah. So there's a certain branch of Hinduism called Advaita Vedanta. Yeah. So they believe that, you know, that God exists in everything. So, yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. How are you going to have a dialogue with an atheist? Okay. For example, you come across an atheist and you're having a discussion. And you start telling him about Quran and Islam, it will turn on you. And, you know, because the person who does not believe in God to begin with, and if you tell him about God, it'll make no sense to him. And we make a mistake of, you know, taking the Quran to him and start explaining him about Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and, you know, the hardship he went through and his miracles and what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has created and how he created and about the angels. He's looking at me like, why are you telling me all this? So what you have to do in order to have a dialogue with an atheist, you have to bring him to a fundamental belief that there is a creator. Okay? You're not going to bring Quran, you're not going to bring Islam or anything about Islam. You have to bring him to one thing. See, every time you're going to talk to an atheist, he will say, I believe in science. I believe in the things I can see, those are things I believe. Science does not explain everything. Science is a study of natural phenomena that are be testable and observable. That's what science is. Science will not be able to get into a supernatural realm. Okay? But how are you going to make an argument with an atheist? So this is what you're going to start with. Okay? Ask him, how did universe came into being? We all know this. He believes in science. His answer is going to be 13.8 billion years ago, the universe came into being. Question is how? So he's going to think for about a little while and say, aha, Big Bang. Yeah, Big Bang, wonderful answer. But Big Bang is an effect. What caused Big Bang? Now this is where he's going to get stuck. Because so he's going to best up argument is going to come up with this, some kind of energy caused a Big Bang, right? It takes enormous amount of energy to create that Big Bang, and that causes the universe to come into being. But the question is, if that energy caused the Big Bang, where did that energy come from? That's a question you're going to ask. Because according to some of the engineers, if you're here, it's going to first law of thermodynamics. Those of you who studied engineering will tell you that it states that energy can neither be transferred from one place to another or transformed into a different form. But the total amount of energy in a closed system remains constant. In other words, energy cannot be created into like an entropy, right? That's what they call it, into a closed system. Where did this energy come from? It has to be there to begin with in order for that Big Bang to happen. You guys are following me, right? Make sense? Okay. So where did that energy come from? The very likely answer he's going to say is nothing, or I don't know. Because that's the best thing that they can do. That's the best thing they have to offer to the world. I don't know. That's what atheism is. I don't know. So if he says from nothing, came from nothing, so ask him. There is a very famous argument, a cosmological argument called a Kalam argument. Kalam, you'll know that, which says that everything that begin to exist must have a cause. That's what you're going to present to them. Anything or everything that begins to exist must have a cause. Okay? If he says, I disagree, so ask him, can you give me an example of anything that came into being without the cause? And watch him get stuck. He's going to get stuck. He's going to get stuck. Because there's nothing in this universe that exists without a cause. Okay? The other thing is, if he says nothing, ask him, can something come from nothing? You know what the definition of nothing is? Absence of everything. That's what a definition of nothing is. That means no electrons, no protons, no electronic particles, no subatomic particles like quarks and lepton and all those. None of that. Absence of everything. It's a concept, right? Nothing does not exist, but it's a concept. Can something come from nothing? And watch him fall flat on his face. Okay? That's what you're going to present that argument to him. Can something come from nothing? And nothing is the absence of everything. But if he's well read, he's going to throw something at you. It's called virtual particles. I mean, if you have studied quantum physics, you'll know about this, right? It's called virtual particle. And what virtual particles are, they pop in and out of existence. All these atheists say they come from nothing, but actually it's not nothing. Ask them and tell them, if you believe that virtual particles come from nothing, you're wrong. Virtual particles are, pop into existence and go out of existence because of the fluctuation in quantum field. It doesn't make sense. This is a scientific term. Fluctuation in the quantum field. That's what causes virtual particle to pop in and out of existence. So actually, it's not nothing. It is something. The existence of quantum field that you cannot see causes that virtual particle to come to be. Am I making sense? Everybody's following? Did I put anybody to sleep yet? Okay, good. So.
Oh, particle.
Yeah.
God's particle.
Yeah. What a Gauss particle? What is that?
Higgs boson.
Higgs boson?
Yeah.
Higgs boson. Where?
The big argument.
Yeah, but that's what the virtual.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what virtual particles are.
Okay.
Yeah, Gauss particle. That's what they call a Gauss particle.
It was so upset why he called it a God's particle.
That's what it is. The virtual particles. It's a quantum. Yeah, it's a fluctuation in the quantum field that what causes virtual particles. They're so-called Gauss particle. That's what it is. But atheists will use this every time, because they have very few books on quantum physics, and they'll throw this at you. But you can counter that easily, very easily. Okay? Now, if that energy causes the Big Bang, you see, and this universe came into being, and you see an order in the universe, right? You see an order in this universe. millions of galaxies, Earth and heavens and the stars that came into being because of that. And if you look at this, this is by design. It's not a random act. Okay? It's not that a bunch of monkeys took a paint and threw it on the wall and they created like Renoir or created like a Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. No, that's what it is. That's what they're saying. A bunch of monkeys threw a little paint and threw it on the wall and they created Mona Lisa or a Renoir painting. So this is not a random act, and you see a design. You see this phone right here. It has a camera, and I think it's like a 20 megapixel, something like that, right? 20, 25, whatever, whatever megapixel, they increase it every year. The megapixel, it captures your picture like to the perfect T. But your eye is far more complex than this camera that's built in there. And you believe that if I show it to you and tell you, well, this came from nothing. It came from like a sand and silica and millions of Earth. The sand and silica was buried in the earth, and all of a sudden you got a cell phone. Tell him, is that how it is? Well, he can't help but agree that if this has a designer, this has a designer. Your eye is far more complex. Your body is far more complex than this. Right? So, like Dr. Saab said, the atheism is, it's just absolute silliness. Okay? And make sure when you present these arguments in atheists, do not bring like a God and an Quran in it. Because you have to convince him fundamentally that God exists. There's a thing or entity or creator that exists first in order for you to proceed further. And once you convince him that there is an entity that is a creator, then you start telling him about the Quran and other things. Otherwise, don't even go into that realm, because he's going to start making fun of you. Your prophet, he went to heaven on what, a horse or a donkey or what? Astaghfirullah.